talk for today. We're talking about mistakes in the education, and I think not enough people, everyone kind of intuitively knows this, right? Like mistakes in education, but I think a lot of people don't take those mistakes and do something with them. Like I think they just continuously make mistakes over and over and over and over and over again, and don't move in different directions. So that's what we're going to talk about. I'm going to talk about from again someone who never graduated high school, has a small business here in St. Louis, Missouri, making furniture for people. It's been a great business, a good middle class living, and how I've used all the freaking mistakes that I made along the way to push me in the right direction. And I hear people just constantly bickering about, the wages that they're giving, the cost of everything, the not being happy with their jobs, not being happy with their home life, and making mistakes is just such a great way to get you going the direction you need to go to make things better. But again, I think enough people just aren't out there moving in the direction the mistakes are telling you to go. So that's what we're talking about today. I'll tell you guys, like all the mistakes that I've made, I'll talk about those a little bit and how it's kind of led me from moving all over the country, going all around the world to finally ending up where I'm at today, which is here in St. Louis, Missouri, making furniture. So anyway, that's what we're talking about today. My name is Eric Wilkin. I'm the Splendid Crow here in St. Louis, Missouri. We are a small furniture boutique company. We do, I don't know, 500-ish pieces a year, small seven-figure business. And it's fantastic middle-class living. We have about 9 employees. And it's a great business. It feels good teaching people how to do things. It feels good seeing other people work with their hands, learning trades, doing skilled craftsman and artisan type things. And like I said, it's the only way I want to make a living anymore. I don't want to go back to working for somebody else. I don't want to go back to having to put up with rules and regulations and timetables for corporations, basically. So that's what we'll talk about today. So anyway, the idea that mistakes are an education. I wrote that mistakes equal education because that's the truth. Like I think we've given too much credence to the idea that going to college is somehow going to get you moving in the right direction in life. That going to college is going to give you a life that is better than your parents, right? Going to college is going to solve the not making fuck ups in this world. So you put it on someone else's shoulders, i.e., teachers, i.e., professors, i.e., anybody but either the parents or the like the elementary grade school type educators, the small business educators, these kind of people. Like I think everyone's trying to kick the idea of making someone else's life onto somebody else, and we don't have to do that. So this idea of mistakes. So the truth is that me, like anybody else, have just made a ton of mistakes. Like I've made more mistakes than I know what to do with. I always bullshit with people and say that one of the things that I've always done is I just bashed my way through to owning my own business, right? I bashed my way through to becoming a fantastic furniture maker, to making one of the finest pieces of furniture and the finest finish in the furniture industry. I've done this by just beating my head against the wall, working, 60, 70, 80 hours a week for decades on end. And while that's true, the major mistakes that I've made have pushed me in the direction that I need to go. And that's what I need people to understand. If you're going to take anything away from the talk today, it's that when you make a mistake, it doesn't mean the end of the world. It doesn't mean you're bad at what you do. It doesn't mean that you've landed, just in the wrong spot, that you're going in the wrong direction, all those kind of things. It just means that you need to rethink where you're going a little bit. Okay. So first thing. So one of the biggest mistakes I ever made in my life was that I worked for one company for 11 years. And while that in and of itself isn't necessarily a bad thing, like it's good to work for employers for a long period of time, if they're treating you the way you want to be treated, right? If they're giving you the skills and giving you the opportunities that you want for years on end, right? If it's a reciprocal, give and take. And the truth is that this company just didn't do it. And I've talked about it many times. The company's called Global Engineering and Technology in Goddard, Kansas. And they're a fine company. I think the world of this company, I think they just got sold to Yingling Aviation. And again, great company. But the truth is that I was an overutilized and underappreciated asset there. And that's not their fault. That's my fault. And so one of the things that I did is after about 11 years, which was probably 5 years too late, I moved on. And I went and I chased other opportunities in aviation. And that led me to grow my salary. That led me to grow like retirement, grow my benefits, and actually get to travel and go to really cool places around the world and seek different opportunities within my industry. Because the truth is, I wasn't gonna get them where I was at. The things that I did is so I started off as a furniture maker there, right? I made furniture, and then they saw that I would always volunteer for things. So when opportunities came up to learn engineering, to learn planning, to learn anything, I was always the guy who was like, "Hey, I'll do it," and they would ask me, and they really liked that. But the truth is that I stayed there so long, and they basically just had me bounced around doing all these kind of jobs. There were never really raises involved. It was never a pay for performance kind of situation. It was very much an hourly structure. There was no incentive pay. There was no any of that. And I think a lot of people are in that situation. And the truth is that that's okay. Like there's nothing wrong with that. One of the things that that company really did that really helped me, I think, to get to where I'm at today is they always had me working on all the R&D projects, right? The projects that weren't CNC cut, the projects that didn't have good engineering, the products that may have just been designed on a napkin and had to be built. Like they gave me the opportunity to work on those things, and that was really beneficial in order for me to learn to make things basically from scratch, right? To make things using my head instead of constantly having really good engineering and constantly having a team of people to give me everything I needed to do my job. My job became just getting the job done with little to no supervision, little to no engineering, little to no support, basically. And that was a good thing. But there wasn't any pay associated with that. So as I went from working on very what's the word I'm looking for here? Smaller, more repetitive projects to working on the defense programs, right? To working on the Sultan's programs, to working on the government programs, to working on all this. There was just no pay really. There was like, COLA type stuff, cost of living things, but there were never any incentives for going above and beyond, doing all these other things. Like this company literally asked me to be a safety coordinator for about 200 employees. And I did it with little to no information. I helped them negotiate being sued by the Kansas Department of Health and Environment, to help them for them being sued by the Kansas Department of Occupational Health. Like I helped them work through all these things, and just no benefits came from any of that work, right? It was just, well, Eric's doing it, and I think they looked at it as, hey, Eric gets to get out of furniture making and get into the office. That's a benefit in and of itself. And the truth is that it's not. It wasn't a benefit. It was just me being young and trying to be helpful and help this company to grow into whatever it's going to grow into be so that I could make furniture, because that's really what I've always liked to do, So not leaving that company probably 5 years early was a huge mistake, okay? The minute I left that company, it was something like a $5 an hour raise as a furniture maker, right? Which was crazy, which told me that the company I was working for was underpaying its people, and that's not their fault because it's a relationship, right? Like the employer wants to get people in for the least amount of money. The employee wants to work for the most amount of money, and there's that balance back and forth. And I think that if I had left earlier, I probably would have made more money in my career as a furniture maker. I probably would have got to work on cooler projects. But the truth is that was a huge mistake, But leaving here's the thing, guys. So leaving that company, and I don't even remember the date that I left that company. Maybe 2005, 2006, somewhere in there. No, I take it back. Probably like 2008. But leaving that company led me to a company called Nordam, right? And this company Nordam, which most people probably never heard of, but it's a conglomerate aerospace company located in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And that opportunity led me not only to make more money, but it led me to go to New Zealand for 3 months, right? To go do really cool things. It led me to work on commercial aircraft like Virgin Atlantic 787s, right? Richard Branson's planes, right? It led me to work on really cool like FedEx planes. It just let me work on projects I would never get to work on, that I would have never gotten to work on, which is really cool. It opened me up to different kinds of manufacturers where normally I would get to work with companies like Hawker Beechcraft and Cessna, to where I got to work with other companies like Pilatus and Ember Air. And I think it was really cool, and it led me to get to do other things. But the most important thing is when I took that opportunity in Wichita, Kansas, they closed their facility in Wichita down and they gave everyone the opportunity to move to Tulsa. And they would help me to move to Tulsa, but they relocated everybody. And I kind of had a choice. It's like I could stay close to where I was comfortable there in Wichita, Kansas, and go find another job, or I could chase the work and go chase this opportunity down in Tulsa. And that's what I did, and it led me to do some really wild things. And the truth is that doing that was really difficult because not only did it lead me to some more opportunities, but I ended up having to get a divorce over it. Like my wife wasn't going to work there. And at the time, I probably would have wanted my wife to go down there. Like all her family was in Kansas. And so it was a really big decision to leave that place. And ultimately, that's what I did. The work for me was more important than anything else. And being somebody and having the things that I wanted in life were more important to me than being close to family or being comfortable, as I always say. So moving away from Kansas was just huge. Like, it was one of these things where I stayed at a company too long. I shouldn't have done it. I should have chased some of these other opportunities. I didn't. I finally started chasing those things, and that led to me getting more opportunities, finally getting to move around the country and around the world. And moving down to Tulsa gave me the opportunity to finally get to work for my dream company, which is Gulfstream Aerospace. And that company led me to get to go all over the place, to work on all kinds of projects and just do anything I wanted to do in the aerospace industry, and increase my wages substantially, increase my benefits to the best in the industry. And it made a life for me that was really cool. I really enjoyed living on the ocean right there in Savannah, Georgia. And it was fantastic. It was a great time in my life. But had I stayed with that company in Wichita, Kansas, or Goddard, Kansas, Global Engineering and Technology, I'd probably still be there today, because it was so comfortable. It was so easy to just be the go-to person, but it wasn't a reciprocal relationship. So unfortunately, it had to go. And what I know now about sticking with companies and always assuming that the company is taking care of you the way that you are taking care of the company, it just isn't true. I think it used to be a long time ago, but truth is that companies don't do that anymore. And I've worked for enough companies that I've seen that most companies aren't really in it for their employees the way I guess we tend to think, that old tropey American vibe of, the company takes care of the employee, you get the pension, you retire, blah, 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 blah. Like that doesn't exist anymore. But I will say that company Gulfstream in Savannah, Georgia, was the closest thing I've ever seen to that old school kind of way that people want to think of corporations. Like, there were so many people there that had worked for that company for 30 years. Like, you wouldn't believe how many people have been there forever. And they had great retirements. They made fantastic money. And they were very happy, like, as employees, hadn't been there for so many freaking years. So finally, ooh, that was close. Anyway, so yeah, there are companies out there that you can stay with forever and it'll work out, I think. But those days are there's companies are few far in between, and it's very difficult to find companies that are willing to do for you what you do for them. And that's too bad. But back to what I was talking about with my topic here, like, you got to be willing to move, right? You got to be willing to make changes when you notice that things aren't going the way they're supposed to go. Other things, like, I was married for a long time to a person that I should have never married in the first place. And it's easy. It would have been easy, I think, to just be like, nah, it's fine. I made this choice. I'm just going to stick with it. To just be like, nah, it's fine. I made this choice. I'm just going to stick with it. And it's a very unpopular thing to say, but truth is that I bailed. Like, I wasn't going to be in this situation um, where the things that were important to me weren't being addressed, right? The things that I really wanted to do in my life weren't going to happen with this individual. I made the unpopular choice of ending that marriage, and I'm still dealing with it today. It's like, it's a damn shame. Ending a marriage is very difficult, but it was a massive mistake. I should have never married this person. And while I still think of this person as a good person, it should have never happened. And anyway, it is what it is. But again, these mistakes in life, they educate you, right? They tell you that you're not doing something right. And I'm not talking about, like, going and, spending a little bit too much money at the, whatever, the bar or whatever, on a vacation. Like, I'm talking big, big things, staying in situations for years on end that you should have never gotten into to begin with, right? Undervaluing your worth. There's a lot of people out there that they say these tropey things like, go out and get what you're worth. Like, going out and getting what you're worth is really hard. Like, it's exceedingly hard. And people always leave that part out. But the only way you're going to know what you're worth is to go out and basically gauge your skills against the rest of the world. If you're one of these people, in my case, furniture making, if you're one of these people that's out there making furniture, and you see yourself doing a lot more work than everybody else, you see yourself maybe working on the more difficult projects, doing the extra things, picking up, cleaning, whatever, making sure that other people know how to do things. If you see yourself doing that stuff for a long time, and you don't feel like you're being compensated fairly, like, you need to go talk to your employer, right? You need to have that conversation and explain to your employer that, hey, this is what's going on. Here's things A, B, and C that I'm doing. I'm adding extra value in these different kinds of ways, and I feel that I'm worth extra money, right? There's nothing wrong with having that conversation, right? And there's a 50-50 chance that the employer is going to be like, yeah, you're right. I probably should, compensate you a little better. And an employer will actually look at that as a good thing. Like employers want employees that are self-aware, that are free thinkers, that can assess situations, can assess the good and the pros and the cons of every situation. Employers like that kind of stuff, But on the flip side, that employer could easily just say, "Nah, I don't really see it that way. You're doing the same thing you've always done, right?" And if that's the case, that's where you got that decision, right? You may have put yourself in a bad situation where now this employer knows that they've kind of got you by the balls in a way because you probably like your job, probably like the thing that you're doing. They don't necessarily have to pay you more money, even though you might be providing more value. Um, that's one of these things I'm talking about as far as a mistake goes. Like, hey, you got too comfortable. The employer knows that you're too comfortable. You kind of made a mistake sticking there a little too long without having this conversation sooner. It's probably time to go. So this is that moment that I'm talking about where yes, you might have a salary, you're comfortable, your bills are paid, but you feel like you're not being compensated enough. Like in your mind, based on things you've seen, all the analysis you've done of your situation, that you're not being compensated fairly. Um, that's that mistake, right? That's that situation where you have to be willing to say, okay, right, I'm going to stick here in this situation, stick it out, and hope it gets better, or I'm going to pivot and I'm going to go do something else. Whether that's in the same industry or going and working for somebody else, or maybe it's having that conversation again, a little more forcefully, whatever it might be. It's moving to where you need to move to because you're not getting what it is you want out of life. But what I see a lot in people today is that when people have that conversation with an employer, they'll say, "You know what, I'm not being paid enough money. I feel like I'm doing more work. I'm doing all these extra things. I'm adding all this value. I'm moving faster. More work's getting put out. Blah 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 blah." A lot of times, people they don't they overvalue what their worth is, right? They don't know exactly where they fit in the grand scheme of things. They see themselves to be a little bit more important than they are, and you got to be willing to take the criticism of your employer when you're in this situation, and then you got to go work with that, right? The idea that an employer just wants cheap labor, they don't, and we don't want just cheap labor. We want really efficient, high value, self-sufficient employees. So if an employer tells you like, yeah, you're kind of fucking off a lot, and yeah, you're really good at what you do, but you're not setting a really good example for other people, like you got to take that criticism and you got to move with it. You got to apply it and then come back to your employer 3 to 6 months later and work again. And if you do this and you kind of move around as all these things happen, I feel like that's what, like, I'm 46 years old, and I feel like that's the thing that I didn't do enough of when I was in the furniture game, right? When I was building furniture for other people, I didn't move around enough. Like, I didn't gauge how good I was at what I was doing, and not only like from a furniture maker standpoint, but as an employee standpoint. Like today, I always tell today, like half of making it in life is just showing up, And the truth is that employees today are so entitled and lack so many what I call soft skills, being able to communicate, looking presentable, speaking in a work-related kind of way, speaking well around customers, carrying yourself correct. So many people lack these things. If you could just do those basic things, like you'll kind of get whatever you want, because no employer wants to find new employees. Like it's the worst thing ever to have to go search for new employees. We would much rather pay the employees that we have more money to do more work. But truth is that we got a lot of people out there today that they want more money, but they want to do the same work, or they want to do less work even. And anyway, it's really important to, like I said, to gauge both good and bad what's going on, and then move. Take that information and just go do something different, right? Whether that's with the same company, different company, same business, different business, whatever it might be. You got to be able to do that kind of stuff and self-evaluate, and don't stay put. Like that's probably the biggest thing that, like I said, that 11 years of my life was wasted, I think, doing what I had done. And while I learned a bunch of skills and it was a good situation, the truth is I don't associate with any of those people. It wasn't like these people were a big part of my life. Some of them came to my house, and some of them were friends for a long time, but all that stuff fades away, And if you're not getting the things you want where you're working, like you got to go do something else, right? If you're someone who's working like I always talk about like people working in restaurants, because it's such an there's so many people that do it, But if you're one of these people that works in a restaurant for years on end, and you're not seeing the raises that you're wanting, you're not growing in your field the way that you want to grow, And this is a big thing for people, especially in like a restaurant industry where things get so stagnant. If you're basically you're an average cook or a normal cook there in a restaurant, and you're that way forever. Like at some point, you got to be willing to walk away. Like you got to go do something else. Like you were in a spot at a company, and that's a mistake. If you're not getting the advancement that you want, the pay raises that you're wanting, if you're not getting those things, like you got to move. You got to go someplace else. And if you don't do that, you're going to be stuck being pissed off in the exact same situation that you're in 20, 30 years from now. And a lot of people like to say, well, what else am I going to do? I got no other options. And this is the thing I'm talking about. Like, this is the mistake, right? This is the part of the equation that so many people are stuck with today. They're just stuck in these dead end jobs doing shit that they don't really want to do or that they, moderately like. But at the end of the day, you're not going anywhere. You're not taking the skills that you're learning and applying them to something else. And I have these talks all the time. I tell you guys, if what you do at your 8 to 5 is not the same thing that you're doing when you come home, it's not your side hustle, you're not going to get good enough at the thing you're doing on your side hustle or your day to day to be able to do it for yourself. Like, it's just not going to happen. Like, you're not going to be able to put in enough time fast enough to get there quickly. Like, it's going to take you forever, and by the time you finally decide that, well, maybe I got enough money saved up, maybe I've got enough skills, maybe I've got enough security that I can go take this chance. Well, you're going to be so old that you can no longer take that chance because you need the security more than you need the chance because you're so old you can't run the risk anymore. And then I see this all the time with people. People say, oh, I'm too old. I'm too beat up. I'm too this. Everyone always has an excuse as to why they can't do the things they want to do. And I'm here to tell you guys, like, it's because a lot of people just stay where they're at too long. And again, as someone who's 46 years old, been doing this been in corporate furniture making for 20, 25 years, I can tell you that you got to move. Like, you have to grow your skills. It's the most important thing. And you can spend a year or two, but if you're not advancing in your career, it's one of two things. Either you're not really that good and you're not really applying yourself, and your employer is not giving you the opportunities that you think and your employer thinks that you deserve, or you just don't really want it that bad. And that's what I think is wrong with most people. I think most people just don't want it that bad. And again, it's no one has to do what I'm telling you guys to do, but if you want it, if you want to get your own business, you want to get all the opportunities, you want to get to whatever, go around the world for work, get into a position in life where everything you do is a write-off because your life revolves around your company. If you want to get to do that kind of stuff, like, you got to stop making these mistakes, guys. The same mistakes of just staying where you're at, being content with doing the same thing day in and day out. This idea that you're just going to get cost of living raises every year and that's going to lead you into retirement, like, those days are over. And again, I say this as a 46-year-old person who's worked 50, 60, 70 hours a week pretty much his entire life. And it's got me to where I'm at today. I had to move all over the country to do it. But 46 years old, I feel pretty good about it. And you guys see me on these streams. Yeah, if when I do them a little bit later in the day, I'm always drinking beers. Like, that's one of my favorite things about being my own boss. I can drink beer whenever I want. I can go to lunch whenever I want, provided I don't have a customer to deal with. You can just do so many things as a business owner. You have a lot of freedom, as long as you don't have a customer or an employee, wreaking havoc on your day. You're pretty free to do things, which is really nice. Like I said, you might not get rich, but the amount of extra time you have, time to kind of do little things that you want to do, means a lot. It's a big deal. And that's what I got here, guys. So I don't know if this content is helpful to anybody, but I always try and talk about just kind of real things about a business owner, a normie business owner, like no education, and grew this thing. My wife literally started it in a 1.5 car garage, moved into this building here. We grew this thing from 2,000 square feet to almost 20,000 square feet. We went from doing whatever, I don't know, $30,000 a month to doing $250,000 a month. And we've, went from years where we were moving 200 pieces a year to doing 1,500 pieces a year. I mean, we've just ran all over the place, kept this thing going, and we've made so many mistakes as a business in order to get to where we are today that there's no business coach, There's no furniture company. There's no guru that could have told us all the things that were going to happen to us. It's just not possible, you know. And even if we had known these things, it wasn't going to keep us from making the mistakes. And that's the thing I don't think a lot of people understand about making mistakes. Like, even if you have the knowledge, even if you got an MBA in business, the problems that you run into still have to be solved. And the truth is that every problem is unique, you know. And if you want to look at it from 30,000 feet, every problem looks the same. But if you're a 10, 12, 15 employee company, you know, you're only looking at things from the ground level. You know, so it's super easy to look at things from 30,000 feet after they've already happened. But when you're knee deep in the shit, it's very difficult, you know. So as these mistakes happen, you learn how to solve them, you know, at the granular level, right? You learn to see things before they happen because you've had it happen to you, you know, a dozen times before, 2 dozen times before. I've been on the verge of running out of money, of going bankrupt, of maxing out credit cards.